Yes, it is now.
I'm about to say no. I don't think we were, yeah.
It is now.
Okay. So yeah, welcome to basically this Iowa test for I'm glad y'all all can make it. I really am. And I'm excited to see. I'm a nerd, so I love reading rules and things like this. So the idea of going over common rules honestly excites me. Like when I saw this book, and you're wrong in this book, I was like, ooh. So sorry to get a little passionate about this. But yeah, so as I was telling, I think some or all of you earlier, when you get commas right, we're gonna have about common rules today. When you get commas right, your whole writing just flows better. Because when you're missing commas, everything, a lot of times you end up with run-on sentences, everything kind of rolls together, and your reader has a really hard time understanding what's trying to be said. Well, just take a seat. And let's see.
Is this the English video?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Sorry we're late.
And we were like, it's like literally just sorry. Okay, it's okay.
We come all the way from Gainesville, so the traffic with the weather is crazy.
It's all good. All right. So yeah, the goal here is for this week, in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be going over some of the most, basically the most essential things that you need to know before taking the Iowa test, and also some of the things that y'all particularly struggle with a little bit in the grammar evaluations. And it's okay. Like I don't want to be like, oh yeah, you struggle with it. Like, oh no. But hey, that's why we're here. We're going to talk about it. You'll be an expert by the time this is over. So, comma rules though. We're going to start out with this week with commas, because I think that's one of the biggest struggles across the board that I saw from everybody. It was just, it was either leaving out commas or throwing in unnecessary commas a lot of times. What I saw a lot was just around little phrases at a time where it wasn't really necessary. We're going to be talking about through these rules where commas are necessary. Sometimes you will put commas around phrases, but then sometimes they're not. So let's see. I want to start off, go look at comma rule 7. We're just going to kind of walk through these, and I'm going to highlight the ones that I think are most common or necessary to know for the Iowa test. Comma rule 7 says use a comma to clarify or make clear a sentence. And the example sentence says, in the night time was extremely important. When you read that, in the night time was extremely important, you don't know, you just think, okay, in the nighttime was extremely important. That's almost a fragment in the night. You don't really know what it's saying. But if you add a comma in the right place, it clarifies in the night, comma. So it's what's in the night? Y'all know what in the night is? What's the grammatical term for in the night in the sentence? What's the first word in that sentence?
In.
In. What is in? A preposition, and it is a prepositional phrase. And so oftentimes, when you start a sentence with a prepositional phrase, it's actually I think it's a rule later that we get to. Sometimes if it's short, you won't need to put a comma, but in this case, if you don't put a comma, you have no idea what's going on here. So a lot of times when you're proofreading and proofing your work, read it and make sure, all right, is what this sentence is trying to say, is it absolutely clear? Can the reader understand? And that's what having peer editing is important, because a lot of times we don't notice that when we're reading our work. We can't notice the things sometimes that we write, because when we write it, we think, oh yeah, that sounds good. But when we see someone else, the second or third opinion come in, they spot the things, the awkward things that we don't always spot. So commas can be inserted in places where it's necessary to make the sentence clear. But the key word there is necessary. Sometimes you won't need a prepositional, or you won't need a comma, and we'll get to those rules later. Let's see. All right, rule 9 on the next page. Use a comma to set off in a positive from the rest of the sentence. Now, a positive is kind of just like a short phrase that describes or points back to a sentence or a subject or an object in the sentence. So in the example here, it says, Ms. Pratt, comma, the bank president, the bank president, comma, spoke about loans. Sorry, I can't write sideways very well. All right. So what is the appositive in the sentence? Let's say it out loud. The bank president, yeah. So if you just said, Mr. Pratt, the bank president, spoke about loans without comments, all of a sudden, it almost sounds like you don't know if what the bank president is referring to. It's just like, Miss Pratt, the bank president, spoke about loans. You may think, oh, it may be Miss Pratt and the bank president spoke about loans. So you don't really know, you don't know what's going on, but if you have commas here, Miss Pratt, sort of like a quick interrupter, pause the sentence, the bank president, resume the sentence, spoke about loans. Now some people, you can almost substitute parentheses for these. It's kind of the purpose that they serve. Obviously you're not using parentheses. Like parentheses are where you're inserting something that's totally separate from the sentence into the sentence. But this is just, it's a quick little interrupter saying, Miss Pratt, the bank president, just so you know, she's the bank president. She spoke about loans. And if you look at the other examples, the best student is Greg. And then, you know, if you're talking to your friend and you're trying to point out Greg, it says, the best student is Greg, comma, the boy in the last row. So you use a comma to set off in a positive from the rest of the sentence. So it's, so basically a sentence with an appositive can still exist in perfect completeness without the appositive. So somebody read, let's see, Vincent, read the first sentence without the appositive, the Miss Pratt sentence.
Miss Pratt spoke about loans.
Yeah, that's a perfectly good sentence right there. Miss Pratt spoke about loans. But appositives serve to help clarify in a sentence. And sometimes it's not necessarily critical information, like the boy in the last row, you know, maybe you don't really need to know that about Greg. But if you're trying to point him out to a friend, and you're saying, oh yeah, the best student is Greg, the boy in the last row. So yeah, appositives are just add clarification to sentences, and they're set off by commas, or else they're really confusing. The best student is Greg, the boy in the last row. And everything just blurs together without commas to separate things. All right. I'm going to highlight Rule 12 really quickly. It says, use a comma at the end of most direct quotations. So when you're making a quotation, use Gloria's lovely quote here. She says, I would like a hamburger. As a matter of factly. Hamburger, comma, and yes, as Gloria said. Gloria said. So even though, what could this sentence end with if it wasn't a quote?
Period.
Yeah, period, or even an exclamation point if she really wants that hamburger. But when you're quoting it, whenever you use a period, what does that indicate? The end of the sentence, yeah. So using a period here would be inappropriate because Gloria said is still part of the sentence. So when you end a quotation, you use a comma, or if you have an exclamation point, that's okay too. Because even if you use an exclamation point, if I remember correctly, yeah, that doesn't necessarily end the sentence. You can just say Gloria said at the end of it with the exclamation point. That's beside the point. You won't really be doing period, exclamation point determinations for the Iowa test. So that's just a side note. But yeah, you use a comma because it's not technically the end of the sentence. And at any point, if y'all have any questions at all about clarification, just let me know. All right, so the last page has more of the rules that you saw in the grammar after a dependent clause at the beginning of a sentence. And so we touched on this in class last week really briefly. When you have a sentence that is dependent clause, independent clause, in that order. So in this sentence, after we ate lunch, we went to a movie. So write that down. After we ate lunch, we went, continue down here, to a movie. So, independent clause is what? Which is the independent clause? We went to a movie. So yeah, subject, we went, verb, we went to a movie. Stands on its own. That is our independent clause, and that means this must be our dependent clause. After we ate lunch, yep, that doesn't work on its own. After you ate lunch, what? What happened after you ate lunch? And remember, because we talked about this a little bit last week, with dependent clauses, this is called the what? Do you remember what it's called? Make a little word.
Preposition.
Not a preposition, although it could be, but in this sense,
No.
it's not a preposition in this sense, but what's it called? There's a coordinating conjunction, and there's the other one.
Subordinate.
Subordinating conjunction, there you go. Yep, so coordinating conjunctions are the and or, but so those are the ones that combine two independent clauses. But this is called a subordinating conjunction. And it basically, it subordinates, which isn't a bad way to say that, but it provides the critical information after to the sentence. Because without that, we ate lunch, we went to a movie. First of all, that would be two independent clauses. But adding after here gives the sentence a whole new meaning. And so yeah, the subordinator is part of the dependent clause. Remember, the coordinating conjunctions are not technically a part of either clause. They're just a bridge. But with this one, it is part of that dependent clause. So yeah, after we ate lunch, comma, because it's at the beginning of the sentence, we went to a movie. And then if we said it the other way, we went to a movie after we ate lunch. Perfectly acceptable without a comma, because it comes after the independent clause. So yeah, any questions or clarification needed on this one? This is a tricky one sometimes. Sounds good? Sounds good. And yeah, and while we're on the topic of clauses and independent and dependent and all that, for independent clauses, it's independent clause. We can even say, we ate lunch, comma, and we ate lunch, comma, and we went to a movie. Sorry, some markers. Going on. So yeah, the and serves as a bridge between the two. And you have to have the comma there. And another important thing to note, I think, while we're talking about this, is to make sure you avoid run-ons when going over your work. Make sure you kind of did what you did in that assignment y'all did, I guess 2 weeks ago with the independent dependent clauses. Kind of in your head, label your independent and dependent clauses. And make sure, find the subject verb in each one. And make sure once you figure out which one's which, make sure you got your proper punctuation in those sentences. Because otherwise, if you don't have proper punctuation, you'll have a run-on, and it's first of all hard to understand, but then your reader's just kind of like, wait, I don't even know what they're trying to say in the sentence. It's all just running together. So yeah, that's it. I got practice proofreading when I was going over those assignments because I had to make sure it's like, all right, do I have my subordinator? All right, subordinator, subject, verb. All right, so there's our dependent clause. And then, all right, subject, verb, this is a full sentence, that is an independent clause. So yeah, that just figuring out your clauses first sometimes is the key to figuring out, all right, what punctuation do I need for this sentence? And while we're at it, semicolons. Those were something else I also saw that was a little bit misused. With semicolons, all you do is instead of a comma, you just put it right there. You have, we ate lunch, we went to a movie, and that's it. And when you do however, when you use a semicolon with however, we ate lunch, trying to do this, what would be a good semicolon? We can have, we ate lunch, semicolon. However, comma, we ate dinner 2 hours, oh, I'm sorry, I can't write sideways, I thought I could. Later. All right, period. There we go. With, I saw a lot of times in the grammar evals, for a lot of people, no one in particular, with semicolons, they would put the semicolon after however and with the comma before however. But if you do that, we ate lunch however becomes kind of like your first sentence, and that does not sound right. It's we ate lunch, end of sentence. However, and however is just a word that sets off the next half of the sentence, or the next sentence, or next independent clause. Get my terminology mixed up. We ate lunch, semicolon. However, comma, we ate dinner 2 hours later. So yeah, semicolons are either just a direct bridge between two independent clauses, or you can sometimes have words like however also used to bridge them, but make sure that it's semicolon, however, comma. Yeah, just to make sure it's clear where the two sentences, the two independent clauses, are separated. Ooh, okay. Rule 17. This one can sometimes trick people up. Except I think a lot of times I saw sometimes with sentences, people would start sentences with prepositional phrases. And prepositional phrases are not always dependent clauses. Like in the night, there's no subject or there's no verb in the night. And with a clause, one of the key things about a clause is it has a subject and a verb. I know the book, I noticed Saul's book, the Essentials in Writing book, even said something about how it may have either or both. But growing up, all I remembered learning was that there was both a subject and a verb. So for now, until I hear some really good explanation as to how there could be one or the other, just assume there's always both a subject and a verb in a dependent clause, or in a clause in general. So anyway, but yeah, we're going to talk about prepositional phrases for a second, and how those are set off with commas in a sentence. All right, so rule 17 says use a comma after two introductory prepositional phrases or after a long prepositional phrase when the subject follows it. All right, so what was the, let's see. It says, what's the difference between just an ordinary prepositional phrase and what this rule is talking about? What's the word that you see here? What's that? Hey, you good? I'm sorry. We're doing two. Yeah. Yeah, no problem. All right. Where were we? Aha. Okay. Use a comma after two introductory prepositional phrases or after a long prepositional phrase when the subject follows it. So what are the two differences between the prepositional phrases we're talking about and just a typical prepositional phrase? What are the key words? Like look at that rule and see what type of prepositional phrases is it talking about.
Well, has in and during in the middle of the night.
Well, what type type of, and then just read the rule. What does the rule, what type of prepositional phrases is the rule, or is the rule talking about?
After a long prepositional phrase.
A long prepositional phrase, and then what's the other one?
When any subject follows it.
But before that, what does it say? It says use a comma after.
Two introductory prepositional phrases or after a long prepositional phrase, the subject follows it.
Yeah, I want to make sure I understand what that means. So when it says two introductory prepositional phrases, what does that mean? Like look at the first sentence. What are the two prepositional phrases?
In the middle of the night.
In the middle
That is two.
and of the night.
night.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I was like,
See,
oh,
you can
wait,
see they're not.
wait.
Whenever sometimes you can have a sentence that has like three prepositional phrases in a row, like in the middle of the night after 11 o'clock or something. Like right there, that's three prepositional phrases smacked up next to each other, but it sounds like one. Like when they all flow together. Yes, right there. that's a really long one, but yes. Yeah, after a little bit, it gets so long, you're like, what do we even start with? You lose track of where you were at the beginning. Anyway, but yeah, it says use a comma after two introductory prepositional phrases or after a long prepositional phrase when a subject follows it. So the key here is sometimes if you have a short prepositional phrase, like even with, for instance, go back to page 1, I think, that in the night sentence that we looked at, that was,
Rule 7.
yeah, rule 7. Let's think of a different example, because in this sentence you need the comma to clarify, but let's think of a different, so in the night, we can even say, in the dark, bats can navigate skillfully. So, also in that sentence, you would probably want to say bats can navigate skillfully in the dark instead of starting off the sentence with a prepositional phrase. When you start off a sentence with a short prepositional phrase, or just a really short, after, even like an after lunch thing, you don't need a comma for that. So you can just say, after lunch, I played frisbee. So you don't need, after lunch I played frisbee. Or a lot of times I like starting sentences with the subject, usually when possible. So I would probably say, I played frisbee after lunch. But even if you want to start it with that prepositional phrase, a comma isn't really necessary when it's just a short prepositional phrase. So that's why that distinction is made between this and Rule 17. Rule 17 says you really need a comma if you have a long prepositional phrase or there's two introductory prepositional phrases. Because it's such a long prepositional phrase, if you don't have the comma there, it's just not set off from the rest of the sentence.
That board is about to fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard it say a little bit.
And you don't have to write over as far because I'm zooming in on you when you're writing.
Oh, thanks.
So.
Okay. All right. So let's look at the sentences in Rule 17. In the middle of the night, Frank boarded a plane for Japan. In the middle. That's our first prepositional phrase. In the middle of the night, Frank boarded a plane for Japan. How many of y'all know Japan? I've not been to Japan. All right. In the middle of the night, Frank boarded a plane to Japan. So if we didn't have this comma, in the middle of the night, Frank boarded a plane to Japan. You could probably still understand what it's saying, but the comma just helps keep things distinct. Honestly, that's a lot of times just what commas are there for, to keep things separate when they need to be, but also don't. I think what I saw a lot of times with the grammar evaluations was people would put commas basically around every single separate phrase sometimes in the grammar evaluation. And I can understand if you think, okay, well maybe I need to make sure this is set apart. Well, sometimes it doesn't have to be. And it just comes with practice. Sometimes it takes a while to figure out, okay, is it comma needed, is it not? You're not gonna immediately have a sixth sense for commas after one day of reviewing them. It just takes repeated practice, kind of reviewing the rules. Honestly, the dailygrams, I saw, yeah, you get your dailygram book, I saw it right here. I love those things. Like when you do the punctuation activities in the, I think it's usually the beginning, the start, or the second one. Like, take those seriously. When you check them, see what you got wrong, and pay close attention to what you got right. And then just repeatedly doing that every time you do those dailygrams, when you check them. Like, that's how I did dailygrams for most of my life, and that's kind of how I learned them, is just over time, the boring, dull, repeated repetition of that is what helped a lot. Anyway. So yeah, in the middle of the night, because it's a long prepositional phrase, let's set that off with a comma, just to make sure we got it separated from the rest of the sentence. Frank ordered a plane to Japan. And in the second example, during the long intermission, that's one prepositional phrase. During the long intermission, everyone chatted. Because if you said during the long intermission, everyone chatted, it runs together, it bleeds together. And the key thing here, bless you, is to make sure you have your sentence, your actual sentence, everyone chatted. Subject, verb, boom, there it is. Have that set apart. So during the long intermission, everyone chatted. And doing that kind of, with these simple sentences, it's kind of easier to, you could argue that, oh, well, I understand it without the comma, what's the point? But making sure you get the comma rules down with short sentences helps free you up for creating bigger sentences. Because when you have the rule for the smaller sentences, you have a little more freedom. Like, you can make a longer sentence down here, and it's still clear because you have your comma here. If that makes sense. I'm getting off our insurance. But any questions about the prepositional phrases? Because this is like one of those rules where you don't always have to put a comma after the prepositional phrase if it's like a really short prepositional phrase, like at 9 o'clock or in the dark or things like that, which is a really short something to set the context for something. You just need it for long prepositional phrases when you need that division. All right, so on the topic of setting off phrases at the beginning, we're going to talk about using a comma after an introductory participle phrase. That's Rule 18. Yeah, use a comma after an introductory participle phrase. And so a participle phrase, it's like in these sentences, jumping on the bed, the toddler giggled with delight.
Is that, it kind of goes with Rule 9, right?
Rule 9, let's see. Kind of, except
Except this is the beginning.
participle phrases, yeah, they're a little bit different. Participle phrases are a little more critical to the sentence. Because usually in a positive, sometimes the positives can be critical to the meaning of the sentence, but like the things we were looking at earlier with the positives, like Ms. Reno, the bank president, spoke about loans. So Ms. Reno spoke about loans. Like that could work on its own as a sentence. We invited Tracy, our best friend, to dinner. Usually with the positives, it's just kind of supplemental, helpful to know information. But with this participle phrase,
It's a little bit more substantial than needed.
it's usually describing. I'm bad at finding words. Like look at the nature of it. It says jumping on the bed, the toddler giggled with delight. So it's describing what the toddler is doing while they're jumping on the bed. So without jumping on the bed, the toddler giggled with delight. That on its own. The toddler giggled with delight. All you know is the toddler's giggling. You don't know what they're doing. You don't know why they're giggling. You don't know who's making them giggle. You don't really know anything about what's going on. But the participle phrase, it's kind of like a little additional information about what you're looking at. Like, it's going on at the same time as the rest of the sentence. So, jumping on the bed, the toddler giggled with delight. And then, torn into shreds, the red handkerchief hung limply from the bush. So, while the red handkerchief is hanging limply from the bush, it is torn to shreds. So it's like the participle phrase is describing kind of the state of the subject in that sentence. That's kind of a little harder to put into words as to how it's different from the rest. But yeah, that's you would use a comma to separate those. So jumping on the bed. Toddler giggled with delight. Because if you just took away the comma, jumping on the bed, the toddler giggled with delight. It starts to run on. It starts to run on. And then if you wanted to add anything else to that, it's hard to understand exactly what's going on here. So if you add the comma, jumping on the bed, comma, the toddler giggled with delight. Because really the key is commas kind of separate, I guess they kind of keep things clear. They keep your original independent clause, original subject verb clarified. Because if you don't have the comma here, you'd almost be tempted to think that jumping on the bed is the subject of the sentence. Like jumping on the bed, that's like a noun in its own sense. So using the comma helps signal, no, that's not the subject. We're talking about the toddler here. That's who we're talking about. Yeah, then
Yes, Rule 15. So
Yes.
if the dependent clause is in between two independent clauses, do you put a comma or not? Because it says don't put it if it's the end and put it in the on if it's in the
it's a good question.
beginning. So-
All right, let's go over that. I think that's a really good thing to bring up. All right. So basically, that sentence structure you said it'd be independent clause, dependent clause, independent clause. All right, I want to see what y'all think. How would you combine this sentence structure here? How would you combine that? What would you need to do?
Comma or then conjunction and comma.
Let's try that. All right. Let's think of what could our sentence be? Our example sentence. What's an independent clause? Someone give me one. It could be ridiculous. Yeah. Do anything?
After we.
Independent. It needs to be independent.
Oh, independent.
House.
The house is burning.
Yes.
Sure.
Oh, is that what you said?
I said burning, but we could go burning.
We can do burning.
Yes, yes.
The house is burning. All right. The house is burning, comma. Ooh. So now I'm thinking about this. All right. In this case, okay, the key thing here is this dependent clause. Which independent clause is it going with? That's what you gotta think about. Which one?
The last one.
The last one. Okay, in that case, you would not want to put it at the beginning. You would want to put it at the end. Because the sentence meanings is still the same. Like it's still, the sentence still retains the same meaning. If you say,
So you wouldn't want to put a dependent clause in the middle.
you wouldn't, because it wouldn't flow. So if you think about it, the house is burning, let's see, because,
After the burn.
Because the kid knocked over a lamp.
because the kitten knocked over what?
A lamp.
Because the kitten knocked over a lamp, Alright, so the house is burning because the kid knocked over a lamp, and then we need another independent clause.
They called the fire department.
Hmm?
They called the fire department.
They called the fire department.
So we called.
So
I'll just
then-
say FD.
How about then they called the fire department?
Well,
Well, that's not a good.
Yeah.
Clause.
so, alright.
The house is burning because the kid knocked over the lamp. They called.
So, okay, here's how we could do it. If the way we came up with these sentences, the way it would make sense is the dependent clause because goes with the first sentence. So in that case, you don't need a comma because the dependent clause is coming after it. The house is burning because the kid knocked over a lamp. So the house is burning because the kid knocked over a lamp, comma, so they called the fire department.
So that would work.
That works, yeah.
If it goes with the sentence before it, it can't go start. Okay, so if it was going with the last independent clause, it couldn't do that because it was in the middle.
If it was going with the last one, it would just sound better to be at the end.
It would be grammatically.
Grammatically.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. Because I'm trying to think of how you could say it, how you could make it sound
Because
good
they
in
did
the
knock
middle.
over the lamp, the house was burning. So they called the fire.
Yeah, because let's think of something, a different dependent clause. I'll bracket this. Let's just say, when they got home. So when they got home, that's a subordinated conjunction. It can go with this one. So when they got home, they called the fire department. So you could separate, I think the only way you could put this together, whoops, trying to stay organized here, I'm struggling, okay. So the bracketed ones, the parentheses, those are the dependent clauses, these are our independent clauses. So say we wanted to make a sentence with, where these two are together, this one's independent. So the house is burning, comma, and we want to say, we could either say, so they called the fire department when they got home, or we could say, I think the best way to do that, honestly, yeah, I guess you could do it either way. You can either use a semicolon and say, the house is burning, semicolon, when they got home, they called the fire department. So when they got home, comma, they called the fire department. Or you could say, the house is burning, comma, so when they got home, comma, they called the fire department. So it can work. You just have to make sure that, because yeah, in my head, I
It
think
depends on the sentence.
it depends on which independent clause, or which dependent clause is going with which independent clause. Because the way we had it, it would have made no sense for the second one. Like this does not go with the fire department. Because the kid knocked over a lamp, they called the fire department. The house is burning because the kid knocked over the lamp. And then because the house is burning, they called the fire department. So logically, yeah, this one doesn't go with this one. Yeah, I'm glad we brought this up. This is good. Getting the wheels turning with making me think a little bit at 9 in the morning. All right.
Is it time already?
I know, right? Yeah. What time is on the next class?
Right, so when it starts.
Starts at 9:15.
So we're supposed to get in there by like 10.
Okay, in that case, we'll wrap it up. So, those sheets that you have in front of you, go ahead and just start working through those. I'm going to give you just a few minutes to work through some of those, the worksheet questions. And then once you're done working through, at least, let's just say go through the first,
6.
let's see, do 1, 2, 3. Do questions 1, 2, 3, and 7, and then we'll talk about them.
1, 2, 3, and 7.
1, 2, 3, and 7. And then you can do the rest on your own. And then if you ever have any questions about those, you can bring it back to me next week or to scan or just asking via email, that works. Go ahead and do 10 while you're at it. It's 1, 2, 3, 7, and 10. You guys, yeah, just kind of put your pencil down, look at me when you're done. So I know you're done. All right, I heard a bunch of emphatic pencil dropping. Okay, let's read through. All right, question 1, where would you put the commas there?
Before and after Italy.
Yeah, in Rome, comma, Italy, comma, there are many beautiful mountains. Yeah, so if you said in Rome, Italy, there are many beautiful mountains, you need the comma before and after Italy to set that apart. In Rome, Italy, there are many beautiful mountains. Because if you took away Rome, it would be in Italy, comma, or I guess that's one where you may not need it, but in Italy, comma, there are many beautiful mountains. All right, 2. We're going.
Before and after it seems.
Yes. Yeah. Good job noticing that that's the interrupter. There you go. I love seeing the picture hands. Yes. All right. His entire outlook, it seemed, had changed. Yes.
It's still going to be a little confusing even with it.
Yeah,
It's
so
a
I
little
know
strange.
what the heck is he trying to say?
His
Yeah.
entire outlook, it seemed, had changed. I've definitely got
But see, when you're reading it, basically the only way that can be grammatically correct, the only way it would make sense is if it was just an interrupter, and so you have to set that off with commas on both sides. Yeah.
Doesn't it help like when a phrase or is enclosed with commas, can you take that one out and just say his entire outlook had changed?
Yeah, usually with the positives, prepositional phrases, and then the interrupters like that, yeah, you can just cross them out and the sentence should still stand on its own as a whole. Yeah. Good point. Question 3.
before and after my kid.
Yep.
Yep, because that's in a positive describing Miss Ish. I don't know who named their kitten Miss Ish. That's up to them. But yeah, Miss Ish, my kitten, just so you knew who Miss Ish is, I would not have known otherwise, has gone to sleep. Yeah. All right, now 7 first. You got 7?
Yes. After blue and after lovely.
After.
Blue.
What?
After
Why would you
after-
put-
Ooh, no, actually, this is something we didn't quite get to this.
I
but
got
usually,
I got blue and then after shimmering and then after blue shimmering like 3
I thought you weren't supposed to do
I
that.
didn't, it was
yeah, I was about to say, was it
blue
say
and
that
after
in
level.
You weren't
Yeah,
supposed
yeah,
to
yeah.
comma after color.
you usually with colors, you usually don't put commas after colors. And that's one of those funny rules that honestly, it's just a matter of what sounds better. Because usually with colors, it's such a obvious describing word. So yeah, we usually with blue shimmering lights. So blue shimmering lights can be fine on its own. But honestly, it's not wrong if you do put one here. So sometimes if you're not sure, just put the comma there. But yeah, blue shimmering lights, but it's not after shimmering. It's just after blue. Blue, comma, shimmering lights. Because those words, the commas separate the describing words.
And lights isn't describing, that's what it
Lights
is.
isn't describing, that's what it is,
I just
exactly.
got caught up now. I was putting it
Yeah. Good find. And yeah, this is the blue, comma, shimmer, you could put comma or not. Blue shimmering lights reflected on the lovely, calm lake. And so lovely and calm are describing the lake, so you put lovely, comma, calm lake. Yeah. All right. And question 10.
Before remember.
Yeah, if you become a famous star, remember the folks back home. Yep. All right, so go ahead and take this. I want to go on the chart. Yeah. Take this sheet home with you, finish it, and bring it back next week. And as you're doing it, if you have any questions about anything, any more common rules, first of all, look at that lovely sheet that you have. keep that thing handy because I love that list of rules. It puts everything very simply. And it's all in one place. So yeah, this would be a great resource just to keep when doing any writing assignment.
There was